Hey everyone, welcome to week 12. I was doing week 12. Danny just pointed out that it has to be week 12. So, it's been a mess. For the past 4 days, we've been on week 21. So it kind of feels like week 21 after 2 weeks quarantine. But this is our last day que día es 5 of our self-portrait week. And we turned our gaze onto ourselves. And it's been super exciting. I've always loved painting myself and pushing things about myself, about the way I perceive myself, which is very, very important, I feel. This is not about just being faithful, but just perception. Just how do you feel about yourself? How do you think other people see you? How do you perceive yourself? How do you present yourself to other people? All those things can be sort of feeding into our painting. So today is our last day. The neon colors have made a comeback and they're fighting against my trusted 4-color palette, my gray palette that I love. And I don't know who's winning the battle, but I've had a blast trying to incorporate the colors that I thought once were absolutely dreadful and cheap. I'm actually loving them. So we'll see what we paint today, but this has been an awesome week. We're super happy that you guys let us be your company. So I hope everyone's safe and I hope all your families are well. Okay, so thank you. I'll see you next week. We'll see you next week. Whole new theme. So be safe, stay inside, stop the spread, take care of your families. Wash your hands. Wash your hands. ¿Cómo te lavas las manos? Wash your hands. All of that. Bye. Okay, let's get started. Last day of this self-portrait week. And for this last one, I had promised the neon colors were going to make a comeback, and this is their Swansong. This is the last time I'm going to use them for a little bit, because I really do think, like I said on Wednesday's painting, when I was painting my hand, painting the self-portrait that I had done on Monday, having those colors in my palette is something that I absolutely enjoy because it does broaden my understanding of chroma and of possibilities in my hue range. But it also, I think, damages the relationships that I had already formed with the colors that I have had in my palette for years. So this is not being hesitant in my part to separate myself from the colors that have been familiar to me. This is more in the sense that I really do believe that I've worked really hard at building a relationship with those colors that I have in my palette. And I know it sounds kind of dumb, but it is sort of betrayal in a sense that those are my friends. And I don't want to sacrifice the relationship I've worked so very hard to create with them and to nurture with them just because I find a color attractive. Like I was thinking about it, after I did this painting today, and I was weighing everything and saying, okay, I can totally see the benefits of having these colors. They are sort of distorting my understanding of the colors that I have previously used. So I don't know if I'm willing to sacrifice everything that I've built because I just want to create these new relationships. This is not me being stubborn and having an inability to recognize opportunities to grow. This is more of me knowing that I have my trusted friends here, and it's like having like a really crappy, banged up, trusted car that you've had for your whole life. And maybe on vacation you can rent, a Ferrari and take that for a test drive. And it is amazing, but when you go back home, you go back to your trusted little car, which, by the way, that was the story of, my family. And that crappy little car, it was my father's car, and I loved it. Well, it was my sister's car, but then it was my father's car. But then, I used it too, and it was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. It stalled all the time, but we loved it. We absolutely loved it in our family. So my palette is like my family's car. I'm not willing to give it up. In particular paintings, if I am looking for very specific relationships and I want to exalt those relationships and I feel that my saturation is not enough to do that, I will introduce those colors. I promise you. This is not me being, hey, this was a fling. This was like a summer fling. No, no, no. This is me saying, yeah, this was fun. This was a lot of fun, but I have to be honest to my own sensibility and know that there are certain qualities of palettes that speak to me in a deeper level. And this has been wonderful, wonderful sort of eye candy, and it's made me uncomfortable, and uncomfortable in the sense that I feel that there is a learning experience behind the act of painting with these colors. So I very much so appreciate it. But I do feel that I am a more sober painter. So I'm happy to go back to my regular palette next week. Although next week we're going to do something different, but we'll talk about that next week. So because this was the last time I was going to use these colors, I thought I would use them in a way that it was a little bit different from the one I've been using. You guys have heard me describe these as being very, very high in chroma, but also having very little body. There's very, very little body to them. They are quite transparent. And I guess it has to do with the pigment, or maybe it's because they're very, very cheap, because these are super, super cheap. And maybe the pigment load on these particular colors is just very, very low. I'm guessing that there's a ton of oil in them and just very little pigment. And I'm sure that in colors of a higher quality, there's probably very nice pigment load to those. But with these, they are quite transparent. And if I want the paints to have some sort of body, or at least the body that I'm used to painting with my other oil paints, I have to add white. I have to add a lot of white, or I have to add a bunch of other colors from my regular palette. The thing is, if I add other colors from my regular palette, they immediately gray them down. So adding the white, yes, does lower the saturation of the color, but it also gives it a lot of body and it doesn't gray it out. It will lower a little bit the saturation. It will make it a little bit cooler because, let's not forget, titanium white is a color. It is very cool in temperature, so it is going to affect the neon colors. But regardless, they are so saturated that the impact of titanium white is in a way mitigated by that fact. But I did something that was different in nature from the way I paint. And I always try to have this quality as a painter, but it is sometimes very hard. And I'm speaking about commitment. Being a committed painter, I think, has to do with recognizing your intent and knowing how that intent can translate into painted decisions. I don't usually paint that way. I try. I try super hard to have like really nice, clean decisions. But the thing is, if I would have to describe myself as a painter in terms of informal terms, I think I love a sort of broken color while I'm mixing, which means that the color is not fully mixed when I mix my color in my palette. There's traces of color everywhere in my mixtures. And because I have a muddy way of painting, which is I just have puddles of paint that I kind of veer towards different directions. So let's say I'm working with primary colors. I'll have a puddle where all the primaries meet. So there'll be an area of the palette that's very gray. There'll be an area that's yellow. There'll be an area that's leaning towards the orange, towards the red, towards the green, towards the blue, towards the violet. So I try to have that puddle kind of stretch in all those different directions, but in the end, it's still a puddle where everything mixes up. This coupled by the fact that I don't use solvent, so I try to wipe my brushes as much as I can. But even if you wipe them 100 times during your painting session, there's always going to be traces of color in your brush, and they're always going to affect whatever mix you're trying to achieve. So my color is always dirty. I would very proudly call it a dirty color I work really hard to try and achieve. So it's very hard for me to do what you are seeing here, which is being bold in the sense that I am using a palette knife first, which I very rarely use to apply paint. I'm much more comfortable using my knife to move paint I've already put down on the surface or to scrape paint. That I love my palette knife for. I think it's a wonderful tool to do that, to find synthesis in brush marks. So if you have a lot of jumbled brush marks, you can just drag your knife across and just by doing that, they all kind of come together and you'll find a little bit of a cleaner color. And to move paint around just so I can get straighter, sharper edges. That's what I usually do with my palette knife. But the things that I don't do with my knives is pre-mix paint. So I don't mix my paint with my knife because I've always felt that mixing a very solid color is just like, ugh, I don't know. I feel scared about the sense of commitment that comes with mixing a flat, solid color. And I don't paint that way. Like, my mind doesn't understand color that way. What I'll usually do is I'll say, well, I need something that's a little bit greener from my puddle, where, like I said, all these colors meet. And I'll just shift the puddle towards the greener side. So I always speak in relative terms. I'll always say, no, I need this puddle to be yellower. And then I put some more yellow. That's about it. I need this puddle to be more purple, and I mix some red and blue. That's it. It's as simple as that. But when I think of just saying, oh, I need to mix like a single color, it terrifies me. It absolutely horrifies me. I'm so not used to mixing color that way that when I have to make this very clean decision and just say, okay, this plane of this form turning can be interpreted as this, and just put that singular color down, like mix it and put it down as a big mass of color. Oh my God, I'll lose the little bit of hair that I have if I have to do that. It's just, I don't know, there's a weight to that decision that I don't think I can bear. So, like I said, as a last sort of hurrah for these colors, I thought I would bring them to my palette again, but start using my knife to pre-mix some colors, or better yet, pre-mix some color relationships. I feel a little bit better by just expressing it that way. And having those very clean decisions down first and saying, okay, I sort of wanted to get to that thing Danny said to me. I don't know if you remember in that first painting, that painting we did on Monday, that I said that Danny came by when I was painting, and she said within the 30-minute mark, she said, oh, that already looks like you. And I love that. I love that there was a simplicity to that painting that already was evoking who I was. So I thought, okay, let's think of 5 colors, a relationship between those 5 colors. And let's see if those can actually get me very close to what I mean, to the essence of who I am. And when I had those very blocky colors, I really liked it. In many ways, I would have wanted it to just be that. Almost like a Ken Cooley collage. For me, he has probably the most exciting workshops that you could ever find, I feel. Like, I want to take a workshop. I know this is a weird time. There's a couple of painters, I'll say it right now, so I don't care. Like, they probably don't know it. I'm not doing this to promote them in any way, but this is just me as a total fanboy just saying that I would take a Catherine Keogh workshop, I would take a Mark D'Alessio workshop, and I would so definitely take a Ken Cooley workshop. I think he's just a genius in terms of design, composition, and all the stuff that I've read about his color theories, if you could call them that, because they are very sensible. They kind of remind me a little bit of the Impressionist color theories. They weren't quite scientific. They were more esoteric. They were definitely more feeling-based. I love that about Cooley's ideas behind color. And I absolutely adore the way he understands composition as abstraction. But yeah, so I wanted to have those big relationships down and say, yes, it works this way. And like I said, I would have wanted to leave it as that. But I think it was, I don't know, I probably wasn't committed enough to understand that I could have solved the painting in those simple terms. So being the painter that I am, I sensed that I was missing something, that I had to try to get to the specificity of the features. I really felt that there was something missing and I had to go for those. And I was struggling to see how I would introduce those. I was hoping that I could do just very little marks and they would evoke my features, but it wasn't really working. For a minute, I thought about making subtle hue changes within that big pinkness of the face. And now that wasn't working either. And I finally landed on the sort of middle ground where I would shift a little bit of the value, just a tiny bit. And I would start making marks, but marks that wouldn't stray too far away from my big value that described that mass of the head. So everything had to be super, super controlled. And I realized that, of course, if there was a pink, I could actually also work within the value range and introduce contrast by complementaries. So I started using a green gray to speak about my beard and to speak about my eyes and sort of like a shadow mass in a way. Overall, the painting was very, very simple. It was my cap being this cool light green on top. The cap's bill was going to be the dark mass, and head was going to be pink. The neck was going to be lighter, and then back again to a darker violet mass. That was the t-shirt. That was it. The painting was super, super simple, and this coupled with a greenish, purplish, somewhat neutral background. So those big relationships, I think, were the ones that I had to anchor the painting on. And then everything else, yes, had to develop the ideas of features, the idea, like I said, of specificity, but it had to obey the bigger relationships. If I started to be a little too picky, which I felt it was at points during the painting, then I was very conscious of me ruining the bigger relationships that I had. And like I said, this painting was about commitment, even more so than just saying, again, like, oh yeah, I have to deal with the fears of using these neon colors. No, because I think I can understand them now in a way, but it was a lot harder to, yes, acknowledge that I understood them as my tools, but now make committed decisions, clean, committed decisions as to how to activate those colors and have them configure what I thought was my form. So that was pretty tough. And if I speak about commitment, like I said, Ken Cooley would be a definite North Star for me in that sense. And there's another painter. She's pretty close to Ken Cooley also. She's Catherine Keogh. Like I said, I would take a workshop with her too. And Catherine has one of the cleanest, also most dynamic decisions, sharpest decisions that I've seen in a painter. Her self-portraits are just absolute magic. They're charged with character. I mean, she is a tremendous painter, absolutely tremendous painter. And when you look at the paintings, they look colossal. They look gigantic. There's so much hinted information, but it's so beautifully presented. And when you look at the sizes, a ton of these paintings are so small that it just blows your mind. It's incredible. I think she's absolutely fantastic painter. And last but not least is David Campbell. David Campbell, I think he's an awesome painter. There's a sense of humor to his paintings. Whenever I see the power that simplicity has when it can communicate with just strength and directness an idea, I always tell myself, why would I need more? Why do I believe that I need to say more when with less I can say it so much more eloquently? And he does that. Like I said, simplicity, courage in those decisions, commitment, oh, incredible. So I think those three, in everything that they do, the decisions are so clear that you can just dissect a painting. You can understand how their mind was working when you see the painting. And that is a blessing and a treasure for us as viewers when we can see those clues as to how they were constructed. Then for us, and especially for us as painters, that is just a blessing. So that was it for this week. I think we had an awesome week. It was an opportune time to look at ourselves. It was a chance for self-exploration, self-acknowledgement. Like I said, those things are invaluable and they're priceless. This time is very, very precious to us. So I think that we have to grant ourselves the opportunity to see ourselves maybe under new light and hopefully learn a little bit more about ourselves. And like I've always hoped, that when all of this is over, we can come out the other side a better person. That's the whole point of life. So thank you guys for hanging out this week. I'll see you guys next week with a whole new theme. Danny and I are going to be here. We are your company. Like I've always said, we are your rock. We're going to be here. So we hope we'll see you guys next week. Bye. Thank you.